Happy New Year, everyone. It is a new year here in the United States as well as down south in Venezuela, where it appears that the fiction of the Juan Guaido presidency has finally come to an end. The last bitter clingers who referred to Mr. Juan Guaido as their interim president have finally capitulated, and they have voted him out of his fictional office, which he never actually held. The opposition of Venezuela, the opposition to the Maduro-led government, has decided to change tactics, it would appear. They no longer are going to claim to be the one true government of Venezuela and say, oh, this Maduro guy, he's a usurper. They're not doing that anymore. In fact, they're actually going to try and run against him in the next elections, and that's why they want to get Juan Guaido as far away from the TV cameras and as far away from the newspapers as possible, because the guy is toxic if you actually want to vote, or if you actually want to earn votes, because nobody's ever voted for Juan Guaido, yet he walked around for 4 years proclaiming himself to be the one true president of Venezuela. It turns out that in reality, the one true eternal president who shall never be dethroned is one Nicolas Maduro. And so Juan Guaido, not only has he been overthrown by his own supporters in a palace coup, although can you call it a palace coup when he's never actually entered the presidential palace? I don't think so. But in this internal fake government coup, they're not even replacing him with another interim president. They're going to replace him with a committee to observe the re-election of Nicolas Maduro. Now, I don't mean to cheer for Maduro, which kind of sounds like I am. I'm not a fan of the guy. I wouldn't vote for him if I lived in Venezuela. In fact, if I lived in Venezuela, I would leave Venezuela. That would be my goal in life. My goal would not be to elect someone different, because I don't think you're going to do it. There's too many people who still like, the Maduro and Chavez government, and frankly, there is no alternative to them. There is no decent alternative. Juan Guaido is not a real alternative. The guy is a CIA puppet. He went to CIA school. He was a manufactured cartoon character, like Zelensky. And people in Venezuela don't want to just put America in charge of their country. They're not going to outsource their government to the CIA. So if their only option is Maduro, who, for all his faults and for all the pain and suffering that he has caused the people of Venezuela, I think that a majority of voters at least look at him and say, you know what, he's independent of the CIA, and he's going to at least do what he wants, and we trust him more than we trust John Brennan or Mike Pompeo or whoever the current director of the CIA is. And, it's never healthy for a country like this to have no effective opposition. I wish that Venezuela had an effective opposition. I wish that they could present some sort of alternative to Maduro, and then, maybe they'd have a chance. I'm not saying that, the Maduro folks wouldn't try to still rig the election in their favor, but at least make them rig it. At this point, Maduro doesn't have to rig anything, because the opposition is a joke. They just spent 4 years pretending like they were the real government, essentially playing house, which is pathetic. And this Guaido guy, the fact that they got rid of him shows that they at least recognize that, the U.S. is not coming to their rescue. The U.S. is not going to come down and overthrow Maduro, which, to give the Biden administration some credit, they solidified that by making a deal with Venezuela, i.e. Maduro, to allow them to start exporting oil to the United States. Now, the Biden administration only did that because of the terrible mess that was created thanks to the U.S.'s support for the war in Ukraine, and the fact that there's now such an oil dearth in the West All of the Russian oil is no longer flowing west, and so oil reserves across the Western world have been drained, supplies have been diverted, and so the U.S. needs to get oil from wherever it can. And so by giving up once and for all on the fiction of Juan Guaido, the United States has forced the Venezuelan opposition to do better on their own. And do I think that they are going to just suddenly become, really effective and competent? No, I don't think that. But maybe someday they will. If they can convince voters that they actually, care about them and that they're not just puppets of foreign moneyed interests. Because that was exactly what Chavez campaigned against back in the 90s. The Venezuelan government was controlled by foreign moneyed interests. That is how a lot of people felt in that country. They felt like they were getting walked all over by foreign interests. People in the U.S., I think a lot of people here can relate to that. But it was way worse in a country like Venezuela, that was tiny and weak and poor. But they get just as mad about that sort of stuff as we do. And so they're not going to, by and large, support a new government that is different from the Chavistas until there is an opposition that stands independent on its own. And if that ever were to happen, then the Chavistas would have to rig elections, they'd have to engage in, voter suppression, and they might do that already, but they don't have to. Because look, people who don't support the regime are leaving there in droves every day. They have been for years. And so every year, the Chavistas become more and more entrenched. So that's just about all I have to say about that. It is truly a fitting end for Juan Guaido. He went out not with a bang, but with a whimper. He tried to go out with a bang many years ago. There was an attempted coup, and Maduro knew about it all along. The military knew about it. They were playing Guaido for a fool, and it wasn't even a real coup. It was a show, essentially, that Maduro and his friends in the military put on to fool Guaido into thinking that his coup was actually working. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.